Hey, folks, I'm going to go out and visit an old friend that was on a previous podcast, and he is the Tick Man at AKA Tick Man Dan. Dan, take it away from the top of the show.
Hi there, Bruce. How are you? It's really great to
Good.
see
I can't hear your song.
you.
Listen up, Tick Man. He started around teaching people what takes one at a time.
This is my theme music.
So sneaky. They like to hide, but if you learn the signs, you can turn the tide.
That's what AI can do, folks. So, Dan, let's get back to the show. So, anyway, Dan and I were talking yesterday, and I had some hiccups with Zoom, and I got 3 different Zoom meetups, and I'm going, no, this is wrong. So we got it right. But anyway, he was telling me he's got AI kicking off his music for him. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm no longer, Bruce, I'm no longer an AI virgin. This is my first foray into that whole world. And I tell you, it was amazing. It was really cool to put in a few keywords and they spit out a song, and it's going to be my new theme. So I'm really excited.
Well, I'm excited for you. And I'm excited to go back and talk to an old friend. It must have been 5, 6 years ago that we had talked about ticks. And you had at that time had a company who you've since sold that company. And now you're doing something different. So, Dan, let's just start with today, what you're doing, and then tell people how to get in touch with you. And then we'll go into the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks again. Well, I invented the only two-sided tick removal tool available on the market right now. And it's really cool because it works well for people and small ticks and pets. And I was fortunate enough to build that company after about 10 years and then sell it. It's now part of the Bug Bite Thing family, and they're a Shark Tank group. And I invented the product basically out of necessity. It's been 5 years since we've spoken, but the tick problem has only gotten worse. And that really started accelerating, maybe I would say probably 15 to 20 years ago, at least up here in Massachusetts, with proliferation of wildlife in our suburbs. And now with climate change, I think the combination is really making things much, much worse. And I'm sure your listening, viewing audience of hunters can back that up, because we're just, as hunters, we see them all the time. We're sitting down waiting for turkeys or deer, and the ticks just seem to be just crawling all over us. So I am no longer micromanaging every aspect of my small business because it's sold. But right now, what I want to do is create a new brand called Tickman Dan, and basically a clearinghouse for all things ticks, education through social media and through the website, and a hotline, and maybe some affiliate links to some really helpful products, and then just basically content, just to tell people how to stay safe, what to do when they get bitten, and so forth. So that's what I'm involved with right now.
Hey, and as an aside, I saw a post saying that non-competes are going to be thrown out as soon as 4 months. So if you have a non-compete with that other company, that's going to be null and void in 4 months.
Well, I don't know who's in charge of that,
Well, the
but
federal, it's a government program. I just can't, it's not FDIC. But anyway,
okay.
I just saw that. I just read that this morning, and I think it's applicable to you. It's going to be applicable to millions of Americans that get a non-compete, and that's going to be shut down.
Okay, well, it's eerily reminiscent of the student loan forgiveness. I'm a guy that
I
believes.
don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'm a guy that believes in your word and a handshake. I made a deal with the new company, and I agreed that I wouldn't compete with them directly for a period of time. And whether or not the government wants to step in and interfere with my rights, as they are starting to do more and more, I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain, because I said it and I stick with it. So
All right. Well said, Dan. So let's get back to Tickman Dan and let's talk about it. I'm going turkey hunting next week in Wisconsin for the second zone or third. It's zone 1 and it's the second season. I think it's the second season. Anyway, May 1st. And so I'm going to be in Tick Alley.
Mhm.
No question about it. So what should I do?
Okay, so first of all, there are two really problematic areas in the country that historically have always been hotbeds for tick activity. One is the Northeast and the other is the upper Midwest, including Wisconsin, where you're going to be turkey hunting. So right now it's important to know what types of ticks are active. We're phasing out the adult deer ticks that have been active from last fall through the winter, and they kind of fade out. It's just a natural part of their 2-year life cycle. And what happens is the eggs have been hatching and larval ticks have been molting into nymphal stage ticks. And those ticks are what you're going to have to worry about when you're out turkey hunting. And you're sitting on the ground, in their habitat, in their bedrooms. So you're going to be a prime target. And there's two types of ticks now that you got to worry about. Not so common yet, but it's going to happen, is this Lone Star tick in your area. Those ticks get on you in a little bit of a different way than the deer ticks. Instead of hanging out like this with their arms out, waiting for you to brush by and sticking like Velcro like the deer ticks do, it's called questing. The Lone Star ticks are called hunters, and they will detect you with some sensory organs they have that are pretty high developed. They can detect you from your movement, your heat, your breath, and they can turn and run towards you. So
Nice.
like a 10-yard circle around you when you step, and they'll be approaching you from all different angles. So luckily right now you don't have to worry too much. They have been discovered in lots of new areas. But in a few years, it may be a whole different story. They proliferate like crazy, and they're going to start to become more common. The biggest concern about these ticks is something that they can give you that creates a red meat allergy. So for all of us hunters out there that are hunting big game and eating red meat, that could be over if you develop this what's called alpha-gal syndrome. So let's try to avoid that. So when you're out in the woods, it's much easier to use repellents because many of those have an odor to them. Turkeys are not a game species that we have to worry about scent control too much. So I would recommend a combination of DEET containing repellents as well as something called permethrin. We may have heard about this. It's something very important to hunters because it's doesn't have an odor that will alert deer and other animals that are sensing you through smell. The permethrin, however, is not to be used on your skin. It's to be sprayed on your clothing and let dry completely before you then use that clothing. And it lasts several washings. So that would be my recommendation as far as repellents go. But the single most important thing you can do is when you're wrapping up your hunt is to check yourself and others very, very carefully and do it often. So I always recommend when you get home, throw your clothes in a hot dryer, your hunting clothes. If they're insulated, keep them in maybe 20 to 25 minutes. If they're not, 10 to 15 is adequate. Ticks hate dry heat, probably as much as we hate ticks, and it'll kill them very quickly. While you're standing there with your clothes in the dryer, without your clothes on, check. Just keep checking and keep checking. If you discover a tick, then it's really important to remove them correctly.
Okay, so permectin or a DEET product.
Yeah, permethrin with a TH. It's a
Okay, how do you spell that?
It's PRE
PRE
METH
METH
RIN.
RIN.
Yeah, I have a company that I know of that treats clothing. You can even send in your own clothing, but they have all sorts of stuff. It's called Insect Shield, and you can find them, insectshield.com. They've been doing it forever. They started treating military uniforms after World War II with insect repellent. So it's actually a different kind of process that will kill the ticks as opposed to repelling them, because, you know, I use repellents on my dogs. The ticks don't like it, but it doesn't kill them. So the dog comes in the house, the ticks jump off or crawl off, and next thing you know, you've got ticks in your house and they're looking for
I
you.
want to kill them.
Yes, you can kill them,
I want to
but
kill them.
never kill an attached tick that you've removed.
Okay, why? We talked about this before, but why don't you want to squeeze it till the blood comes out?
Well, because there's two reasons in that scenario. One is that you don't want to get rid of evidence. If you save the tick, like, oh gosh, I've got ticks all over the place, never out of reach. I always collect my ticks, because if you should actually feel like you're getting sick after you've had an attached tick, you'll want to send that tick in for testing. And a lot of people send it in even before, just right after they get remove the tick. You can send it in for testing, and they can tell you what that tick is inside, what's inside that tick, and what kind of germs, because not all the germs inside a tick, if you get sick, are treated the same way, because there's bacteria, viruses, and parasites, and the only one that responds well to antibiotics would be the bacterial infections. So that's
Now,
one.
where do I send this?
I prefer a lab that's formerly out of University of Massachusetts. It's called TickReport.com, and they turn it around within a day or so. And it's sometimes they have subsidies for discounts, and otherwise it's about $50 for the basic test. It can go up to 200 if you want to get really crazy with all the different types of illnesses that you can get from that. So that's your choice as far as the user goes. But I find they do a great job, and very, very accurate. That's a DNA test, so it's not like the Lyme test, which is very inaccurate. So that's
Okay, and since you said Lyme disease, people have heard about Lyme disease.
Mhm.
In my opinion, quote unquote, medicine today, call it what you want, is clueless to what Lyme disease really is. Is that a true statement or not?
Partially true. I wouldn't put all the blame on the medical professionals. I'm not defending them in any way, but it's a tricky bacteria. And what the more research that is being done is just proving how insidious this little bug can be. So yes, the physicians that have tremendous amounts of experience, located in the heart of endemic areas, will have a better grasp on how to deal with an infection than somebody, let's say, in Arizona, or in some of these more arid climates where there just aren't a lot of deer ticks. So we have to give them a little credit for trying, but some are it just boggles my mind, the response. A lady called me up 2 days ago. Oh, I just took off a tick. I went to the emergency room, which you probably don't have to do unless something crazy is going on. You just know how to remove them and what to do, follow the steps. But she said she requested that he give her the tick, and he said no and disposed of it. And I was just shocked, because you never get rid of it. You're destroying some evidence if you ever need to get it tested. And just because the tick is positive doesn't mean that you're getting sick, first of all. There's more involved with an infection taking hold in your body. But it's good information to know, because if it's carrying Lyme, or if it's not carrying Lyme and it's carrying a parasite, then you'll know what your treatment options are, because you don't want to give antibiotics to somebody that has a viral or a parasitic infection. It's just a waste of time. So yeah, it is tricky. And the biggest problem is that the standardized blood test for Lyme is very inaccurate. So it's not good. It's a clinical diagnosis now.
So let's go back
Mhm.
to TickReport.com. So I put my tick in a plastic bag, put it in a box, sent it to TickReport.com,
Right.
and then they'll come back and tell me if it has Lyme disease, or what will
Correct.
they tell me?
I believe, and I could be mistaken, this was from a few months ago, that they have a standard panel, which is 5 types of pathogens. There's 2 types of Borrelia. Borrelia is what causes Lyme, but there's also a new Japanese strain, new-ish, called Miyamotoi. So they test for the 2 types of Borrelia. They test for Babesia, which is the parasite, and Powassan virus. And they'll also test for anaplasmosis, which is another bacteria. So those are pretty much the common ones, but they may make recommendations based upon where you picked up that tick as to what they would suggest testing. But the
This is a
basic
nasty bug, isn't it?
oh, it's horrible. It's fascinatingly disgusting. This bug. And for an
Yeah,
animal, for an insect that doesn't have a brain or a head, man, there's a lot going on in that little
you
parasite.
think of a weapon of mass destruction, and I'm thinking, dang, what a dispersal agent for whomever. I'm not going to go there, but I'm just saying, wow.
Well, that's what some people think happened with the government, that they created this this problem to use it for biological warfare. To me, that doesn't make any sense, because if you want to get rid of your enemy, you want to wipe them out quick. You don't want to make them just really sick for a long time. You know,
Right. That
so
doesn't make sense.
it makes sense to me. But you know, there's theories going out all the time.
But Big Pharma could handle that.
Well, they could do it. Yeah, they could. Yeah.
We
They-
digress, folks. We're not
Yes.
making that. So let's talk about the epicenters. I think you mentioned it, but there's 2 epicenters in the country, the Northeast and the upper Midwest.
Mhm.
So if you're in any of those areas, what time of year do you have to be extra super cautious?
Okay, I
About
would say
ticks.
probably from January 1st through Christmas.
January 1st. Okay, that's the middle of winter. Christmas is December 31st. So
Yeah.
basically, Tickman Dan, you're saying, Bruce, all year round.
That's correct. When I was a kid growing up in Eastern Massachusetts, we used to go play hockey on the ponds during Thanksgiving break.
Right. Got it. Been there. Did it.
Nowadays, these ponds aren't even freezing anymore.
True. That'd be
So,
true.
I
That'd be
mean, they
true.
freeze for a little while, but we had ice until, you know, March on the ponds outside, you know, and that's when kids actually went outside and spent time doing, you know, physical activity outside, you know, enjoying nature with no phones or internet. So we had a good time, although I don't remember a lot of ticks back then. Now that climate change and the proliferation of wildlife in those suburban areas is so high, we're seeing many more ticks. Now, Lyme disease has been found in all 50 states. The problem is spreading every year. We have these mast years too, with acorns and fruits. When that's abundant, then what you have is you have the mice population, which is the biggest culprit for carrying the germs that the ticks then ingest and then give back to their hosts. We have these mice, and their populations are exploding, mice and chipmunks and squirrels, because of the nut populations. The warmer weather means the ticks don't die. There's not as much of a die off as there used to be. Ticks have an antifreeze substance in their cells, so they can live easily through, you know, historically cold Wisconsin winters, which aren't that cold anymore. And they have no problem doing that. So you have to be worried everywhere now. Out in the Midwest or out in the West, you might have dog ticks, which can carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever. You might have Gulf Coast ticks that carry other things. You have the Lone Star tick that carries Ehrlichia and alpha-gal. And then you have the deer tick, which carries them all. So it's, I mean, I don't want to scare everybody. I mean,
Well, you should.
well,
They need to be informed. People
Yes.
need to be informed. And
Yeah.
right now, it's just like we're fighting in Colorado about the ban hunting of lions, and the people that are going to vote don't know anything about hunting lions.
right.
And so they're
right.
uninformed.
Yeah.
And America, just use your common sense and wake up to the things that affect you and could kill you.
Right. Right. Yes. Well, unfortunately, we're so bogged down on infighting that we're missing the bigger picture. Very quick video I saw from Africa, which kind of is analogous to what's going on in the US. We had these two antelopes, these two bucks. They were locked into fighting, and they were fighting and fighting and fighting. They weren't paying attention to the lions watching them in the background, and eventually the lions walked right up to them. They didn't notice them, and killed both of them and ate them. Okay, so if you think about
Perfect. That's a perfect mime. That's a perfect mime for the United States today.
right,
Perfect.
everybody's so busy fighting each other, they're not looking at the outside dangers, which are coming quickly and could be devastating.
Yeah,
So
from wherever, folks, and I'm not going to name the nations
we're not
that
gonna
would
get
like to
into
see
all
us.
that, but
We're not going to get into that, but that's a perfect mime. So remember that
yeah,
when you're yelling and screaming about each other, there's another predator looking at you and just licking their chops.
yeah. So anyway, so back to ticks. Yeah, so there's going to be a concentration of activity in these geographic areas, but it's getting more widespread. So everybody has to be careful. And as far as tick activity, we don't call it a season anymore because they are active all year round. And it's primarily the activity levels are dependent on the weather conditions. So we've had a terribly rainy, warm, mild winter here in the Boston area. So my anticipation is that the tick activity is going to stay high, and the Lyme disease cases are going to increase as they have been doing this year. So just be alert, be careful, and like I said, always do your tick checks because that's going to be the most important thing and the easiest thing that everybody can do.
So, okay, I got a tick on me. What do I do?
Okay. I would light yourself on fire and throw yourself off the top of a high building.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, the next thing you could do is there's some steps that you need to follow, in my opinion, after being bitten 250 times at least by deer ticks and having removed more than 3,000 live ticks from their host. So I think that, first of all, when you discover that tick, the idea is to get that tick off as quickly as you can. The longer a tick is attached, the more of a chance you have to get sick from that tick. Now, some people think that Lyme disease can only be transferred after a number of hours. I've heard 24 to 36 to even 48 hours of once that tick is attached. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but let's just say it is for the sake of this discussion. People often think, oh, gosh, I'm safe. I got that tick off. It was only in me overnight. No problem. Well, that's incorrect because of what I told you before. There's so many different types of illnesses you can get, and they all have different transmission times. So in the case of Powassan virus, which actually kills people and has been responsible, it's very rare that anybody has that type of reaction, but it kills a dozen or so people every year in the US. And that number is increasing as the Powassan virus is more prevalent within these ticks. So that can be transferred in as little as 15 minutes. Anaplasmosis, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, they all have different transmission times. So if you're safe from Lyme, great, but don't ever leave a tick in you because you think you're going to be safe if it's under a certain period of time. So when you discover that tick, it's really important to remove it correctly. All right, if you think about a tick, I'll give you the most basic terms I can. It's a sack filled with what I call yucky tick juice and a straw that's barbed. That's the vision that you need. That tick inserts its barbed mouth part. And you want me to tell you all the stuff that goes into a tick bite?
Yeah.
Okay. So the tick crawls on your skin. It tries to find a nice, warm, moist, out of the way place. Your genitals, your armpits, the back of your neck, your belt line, all these places are good targets. I've had them everywhere. I had 2 in my belly button, 2 nymphs. I didn't detect them until they were fully engorged because obviously I'm maybe I'm not sticking my finger in my belly button as much as I should, but these are the kind of places they like to go. So once you discover that tick, you've got to remove it correctly. If you squeeze that sack of yucky tick juice, rip it, agitate that tick, you could be increasing your exposure rather than decreasing it. So the best method is to use these fine tip tweezers. And I don't care where you get them. You can get them from my invention, or you can get them wherever you want, as long as they're sharp and fine tip. Now, the ones that I have this little angle on them so that they can get into places like your belly button or behind your ear. And that makes it just a little bit easier to use. But you want to get it down as close to the skin surface as possible. So if you're doing, removing a tick here, you want to squeeze and then always lift straight up. People say, oh, I like to twist the tick or spin it till it gets dizzy. Well, as I mentioned before, ticks don't have heads. They can't get dizzy, and their mouth parts are barbed, not threaded. So it's never necessary to twist a tick out. Grasp it down low, lift straight out in a slow, steady fashion is your best bet. So once you've done that with the tick, and if your viewers and listeners can go search me on social media, Tickman Dan. I have tons of content with just bits of information every day or every other day on different topics regarding ticks. So you can go follow me on those and learn a lot about ticks. So once that tick is removed, what you want to do is you want to save it, put it in a Ziploc bag, write your name, the date, and where you think you got that tick and how long you think it might have been embedded in you. Now, you can do two things with that. You can either save it, or you can send it in for testing to find out what's in it. And I told you that tickreport.com is a great source for that. After you remove that tick, you want to clean the bite site and you want to watch it, because it's very typical for Lyme disease to present with you've heard, bullseye, target rash. That doesn't happen with everybody. But if it does happen to you and you identify it as a bullseye rash, you've got Lyme and you need to see your doctor to deal with that and get the proper treatment. And the telltale signs would be this expanding circular rash. So what I tell people to do is just take a little ballpoint pen.
There you go.
Yeah, circle it and just watch it for the next few days. Now, I get these, maybe this is part of the reason why I don't get or haven't been officially tested and positive for any illness, is that I get these very intense local reactions. And sometimes people mistaken those, what I call bite site reactions, for bullseye rash. You've got to know the difference. And it just looks like a scab or a pussy little, like an infected mosquito bite. But if it doesn't expand, it's just a bite site reaction. If it expands, then you need to go see your doctor. Now, back to how they bite you. The ticks, when they crawl on you and find a spot that they want to stick their mouth part in, they start spitting. They spit all over you. So their saliva contains an analgesic or a numbing agent, so that you don't actually feel the bite.
Lidocaine, natural lidocaine.
Something like that. Tick cane. So it through a series of motions, saw-like motions on the top part of that tube, it ratchets its mouth part into you. And then the saliva also contains a glue-like substance called cementum, like cement, that actually goes into the bite site around the hypostome, which is the straw, and fills in the gaps between the barbs with a sticky glue-like substance that makes it adhere to your body. And then the saliva also contains antimicrobial to keep your body from noticing that there is anything to be infected about. And then it also has an anticoagulant, which will keep the blood flowing so that they
wow. What a engineered critter.
It is truly amazing. And I'm telling you, if the medical and scientific community doesn't find a way to use tick saliva for something good, it's going to be very disappointing to me, because that substance it's got to be used for something. Maybe it can cure cancer. Who knows? But when when the tick feeds, they could feed for a day to up to 7 to 10 days, depending on the type of tick and the stage of its life and where it is feeding and all that stuff. So when it's full, the tick's body triggers an enzyme that gets secreted into the bite site, which then breaks up that glue and causes a little necrosis at where the mouth part is, and it allows it to pull out and fall off, and then it's on to the next stage of life or death or laying eggs or whatever it does. So that's the process for a bite, and they're
Wow.
really good at it. So so after you remove that tick, you save it, you send it in for testing. You can you can consult with your doctor if you'd like, but I don't think there's much that he or she will be able to do for you at that point. But watch yourself for anywhere up to a couple of weeks to a month afterwards. It's very rare that you'll show symptoms after that period. Not impossible, but that you'd be pretty good after that amount of time after your tick bite. So it's not a proven science here of what to do. Everything is different, and that's part of the big mystery of this whole tick-borne illness thing.
Okay, so I got my rubber boots on that I wear deer hunting or turkey hunting.
Mhm.
Deer hunting, unfortunately, now I don't get up in the air anymore, so I am sitting on the ground in a chair.
Mhm.
So the deer ticks, when I'm walking in, walking out, are going to jump on me or attach, just like a burr. You go into
They don't jump. People think they jump or fly or
no,
in the
no,
trees. They do not.
they just attach like a burr attaches, and you come out of the woods and they're attached. So then the best thing to do, as I heard you, is take my outer garments off, put them on a hot dryer,
Mhm.
and
You
dry them
can,
for 20,
you can
30
use
minutes.
scent killer dryer sheets or autumn formula. So you can actually refresh your deer hunt if you're deer hunting, those clothing, that clothing too, or just spray them down with your scent killer stuff, and that'll give it a little bit of a freshen up a little bit
Sure.
for scent
So I
killing.
do that. Then once I get my clothes off, then I do the inspection. I check all my privates and every place that I need to check.
All your
Um,
crevices.
and then even my butt, I check it all.
Yep.
And then once I do that, use a mirror, whatever, a buddy, whatever, your girlfriend, wife, whatever, but check on that. And then once I find a tick, I mark it. I mark my ticks with that circle. Then I remove them with tweezers. Then I put them in a plastic bag, name, date, location,
How long you think it was attached?
how long you think it was attached. Then I have a choice. I can watch it, see if the bullseye grows. If it does, send it in. If it doesn't, then probably I'm okay. And I won't send it in and spend the
But
$50.
don't use that as an indicator, because not
Okay.
everybody gets that rash, and some people take this like prophylactic dose of doxy, a one-time dose to kind of kick it out of the system. Sounds like a good idea, but it definitely will suppress any kind of rash. So if that's the only symptom that you have that will determine whether or not you're infected, and you've suppressed it, then
Why would I suppress it? That's new information. Talk to me about that
some
suppression.
people think that a prophylactic single large dose of doxycycline within 72 hours of a tick bite will cause the bacteria to die before it can become systemic. Okay.
They
So
believe, but that isn't proven, or is it proven?
I have an opinion about that where I say
And which is
which is I don't think that that's a great idea. It's all up to you and your physician. I'm not telling anybody what to do. But again, if the bullseye
you're
rash,
not a doctor, correct?
I'm not a doctor.
Full
No,
disclosure. Tick Dan Man is not a doctor.
not a doctor. So, but what I'm saying is that some people, the bullseye rash is the only real definitive marker that you've been infected. And if the antibiotic, that's one thing that it will definitely suppress any presence of a bullseye rash. So if that's an indicator that you're sick and you suppress it, you won't know until you actually start exhibiting symptoms, which then the symptoms could present themselves way down the road and maybe you don't think about it, or it just could cause some problems. I know that they were even doing test programs where you could walk into any pharmacy. I think they did a couple of tests in Rhode Island where you could walk in the pharmacy and say, hey, pharmacist, I got a tick bite. And they could give you the single dose of antibiotics without a doctor's order. So they were going to test that out. I don't know where that is now, but any doctor probably that you talk to will give you that initial dose as a preventative. So I'm just saying that's up to you guys. I wouldn't do it just because I want to see if a bullseye rash appears, and that way I know I need to get on a whole course of antibiotics.
Now, with my clothing, I've got a pair of pants, t-shirt, and a jacket, let's say.
Mhm.
So it's really easy for that little critter to crawl any place they want to crawl.
Mhm.
Unless you get into a hazmat suit and go hunting.
Well, I wouldn't even feel safe in that. I wear these 8-inch tall Timberland type work boots when I'm
Right.
out scouting and putting cameras out. And one day I was out for, I don't know, 7-8 hours out in the woods. I came home, took off my boots, took off my thick athletic socks, and there was a tick biting me between my big toe and my first toe. So how the hell he got in there, I don't know, but I can tell you these things can crawl through small holes. They can crawl under. You are reducing your chances of getting it on you and on your skin by tucking your pants into your socks, wearing long pants and long sleeves. It's not going to be quite as easy, but don't rule it out. Always be careful. Always do your tick checks.
So repellent, we talked about that. Checking, we talked about that. Okay, I'm bitten. We talked about that. And we talked about out hunting. What else didn't we talk about?
Well, I don't know. I think that's a lot. One more thing I might add is that it's really important to get a proper identification of that tick as well. And there's a free website out of University of Rhode Island that I really, really like this website. And everybody should use it and visit it. It's called TickEncounter.org. And again,
Okay, TickEncounter.org, University of Rhode Island.
Correct. The Dr. Mather that runs that is the king of, you thought Tickman Dan knew a lot? This guy's like my idol. So
good to know.
He's great, Dr. Tom Mather. And he has a thing that you would go on TickEncounter.org and look for something called tick spotters. And you could take a good picture of that tick. You email it right into them or do it through the website, and they'll turn around and give you a definitive diagnosis, definitive identification of that type of tick. Because again, certain types of ticks don't commonly carry, doesn't necessarily, I don't know if they have the capability of it, but we very rarely get direct infection of Lyme disease from a dog tick or this Lone Star tick, which is now pretty prevalent. So it's important to know that if it's a dog tick, well, maybe we don't have to worry so much. We have a little bit more peace of mind. Of course, Rocky Mountain spotted fever can be devastating, but up here in the Northeast, it's not quite as common as it is down south, where more people are getting exposed to it. So it's important to get that identification as well.
One more time, how do people reach out to Tickman Dan?
Well, it's exciting now, Bruce, that I'm just getting my website live. I'm not really selling anything, and I'm not sure how I'm going to make any money at this, but at least I'm doing something I love, helping people out and playing with ticks. But there's a tickmandan.com site, which should be up. I'm hoping in time for Lyme Disease Awareness Month, which is next month in May. But over the next couple of weeks, it should go live. And I've got a hotline that, I may charge a few bucks to have a consultation with
I would recommend that.
Yeah,
I would recommend that.
Yeah, and if you want to get me and have any questions right now, that number is live, and it is 855 bad tick.
855 bad tick. And he's not going to charge an arm and a leg. I've known Dan for a while, but he has value, folks. So don't abuse it. Just like at hutchinhunting.com, where I offer advice. People call me, and I just had a guy, and he was with a nonprofit, Pass It On Outdoors. And I said, hey, I'll do it for you. They're coming out. 5 of them come out. After I spent an hour with him, I said, what's this information worth to you? Was that worth $100? There's 5 of you coming. That's $20 a piece. And I told you where you're going to find elk. I said, I know the state. I've hunted there a gazillion times. I've killed a lot of elk up in this country. So what's that worth to you? He says, yeah, it's worth way more than $100 because I'm paying $800, $900 for a tag.
A broadhead is $20 now.
Or $30. I
Yeah.
use a shout out for Iron Will broadheads. That's what I shoot. And so people have value, and I believe that people shouldn't take advantage of that, but you have to set the value for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get calls all the time. The reason I even thought about this is because people are calling me constantly. I've had neighbors show up at my door, late in the evening. I've got a tick on me. What do I do? I'm always happy to help out. But, for a couple of bucks, I can walk you through the process, tell you what my thoughts are, look at images myself, and then refer you to these other sites.
Yeah, just be a consultant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just be a consultant. And I just, like I said, I had my electrician come in and I said, hey, Frank, I got this problem. He came over and said, yeah, you need a new switch. He went and bought the new switch, came back $110 later. The switch works. The light works.
Yeah. Well,
So $30 for the switch and $80 for his expertise is cheap.
yeah. And I can guarantee you there's many, many things that people are spending money on right now, which don't matter at all.
Don't matter at all.
Something, something like your health, or something that people don't understand because there's a lot of misinformation from years past historically. Oh, I'll just take a match or a cigarette and burn that tick off, and I'm going to crush it and just throw it away. Well, my job is to change that mindset.
I'll say, just stop doing that, because downstream it could mean your life. So with that, Dan, final thoughts, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Again, most important is to do your tick checks. Tickman Dan says, do your tick checks often and don't neglect your crevices. And I'd like everybody, if you could, again, follow me on social media. You can find me on all the platforms just under Tickman Dan. And I'm trying to build up a following so I can continue to provide this type of information and education on, especially like the TikToks and the Facebooks and the YouTubes. So I would love it if you guys could reach out and say hi on those platforms, and please follow me and like, subscribe, whatever you do there.
So this is Hutch on Hunting with another very interesting, knowledgeable show with somebody who knows what they're talking about, and all my guests do. But thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. This is Hutch saying, go out and make it a fantastic day.